We will begin, we will go in district order. So each district member be prepared when it's your turn. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Brown. How are you? All right. To everyone present in person and online, good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Michelle McKissick. I am the district representative for the school board for District 1.
Yes,
So I will begin with the question. In your materials, you shared that you restructured the academics division to increase the direct instructional support to schools by 70%. Which improved the percentage of school leaders who perceived the division as effective by 5%. First, briefly tell us about the data that informed that decision, what made the biggest impact, and what would you have done differently after implementing?
All right, so good morning, Commissioner McKissick. Thank you for that question. So yes, absolutely. So as the Chief Academic Officer in Atlanta Public Schools, we had a brand new superintendent who entered the district around 2020. And so when I was appointed as the Chief Academic Officer, one of the things prior to my coming on board in that position, we had an audit done by the Council of Great City Schools, which is a partner with Atlanta Public Schools, and I know that they are a partner with Memphis-Shelby County Schools as well. So the previous superintendent had requested an audit of teaching and learning and academics in our district. And so out of that audit, there were several recommendations around how to streamline support to schools. In our district, there was, we had lots of flexibility and autonomy in schools, and so there was very little consistency across schools. And so the data first started with the report from the Council of Great City Schools that gave information on the size of the district and their recommendations around what the size of the academics division should be, what those lines of reporting structures, because we had so many different duplicative type of positions. So we might have had about 3 or 4 coordinators for English language arts, and it wasn't effective in consistently providing support to schools. And so that's the first piece of data that we utilize, the recommendations from that particular report. But we also look at, in our district, what we do is we have a central office satisfaction survey where school leaders provide the district with information on how they're receiving services in their particular schools. And so that's another piece of data that we utilize. And so the questions are they responsive and are they impactful? And so we use that data as well. And so those were the foundations for why we went to restructuring the district. The other piece, the biggest impact, I'll say, anytime you restructure or reorganize, it is a tough process because you have to look adults in the eye and tell them that we are going to restructure the division, and so there will be changes in position titles, there'll be changes in reporting structures, there'll be changes in how we do business, and so that was a very tough process. When you tell people that they have to reapply for their positions and that we're not gonna have as many of the positions that we had previously. And so I'll say the biggest impact was we reduced the cost of duplicitous positions across the division. We were able to streamline into 3 big buckets for support to schools. And so as the Chief Academic Officer, again, I lead one of the 2 largest divisions, and so it is broken out into 3 parts. All things teaching and learning, all things student support and wraparound services, and all things instructional technology. And so we were able to streamline the support, and schools knew exactly who they could call, reach out to, and get support from within the division, and they knew what services we could provide. And so that was the biggest impact. But it was also, again, not having inefficiencies in the number of positions that we had that were not able to get support to the ground to schools. Doing it differently. So I'll be very honest, the reorganization of the Division of Academics happened during the pandemic, and that's always very, very difficult. It happened in 2020. And so it happened very rapidly during a transition with the new superintendent. And I think the lessons learned is sometimes you can't do it, as well thought out as you'd like, but you have to do the work and have more deeper conversations with people, because people felt like they were blindsided because the previous year the district had not addressed the recommendations. And so I think the lessons learned is, how do you do that deeper conversation and support for people where you clearly have supportive next steps for everyone who was impacted in that work? And I think another lesson learned is, even though it was during the pandemic, including schools, leaders, other stakeholders in that process of understanding the why and what the next steps are.
If I may have a quick follow-up
Yes.
with that, then, is that something you see executing here on Audit and using the Council of Great City Schools?
Absolutely, I do. It is, they provide exceptional support to urban districts across this nation. I've actually been on a review audit team for Little Rock, Arkansas, where I went in with the new superintendent and did the audit on their academic programming. So I absolutely see that as an essential piece, because you want to step back and let someone else come in and take that look with you and give you a deep dive into the data, the structures, but you also have to talk to all the people that are a part of that. So that's absolutely something that I would consider bringing to Memphis-Shelby County Schools.
Another follow-up to that question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes,
When you're talking about restructuring an organization, again, using organizations like Council Great City Schools to assist with that, my follow-up question is, who remains on that newly restructured division team, right? What objective measures do you use as far as identifying those key team members to determine who stays and who goes?
Okay, so as a part of the audit process, of course, there are always recommendations from the Council of Great City Schools. And so we take a look. They typically provide different structures in comparison to all urban districts that look like the school district. And so, I'll be very honest, you have to look at so many different multiple measures of data, the impact of particular positions and how they've impacted schools and how they've impacted student outcomes is how you determine that. Are we being efficient compared to the size of our district, and are those positions what we need? And so positions are not necessarily about people. I know that they are, but you have to first look at the position and the need so that you can look at it holistically, and then you can focus on the people who are in those roles, because you're trying to provide more streamlined support to schools, you're trying to be more efficient, and you're trying to impact academics at the end of the day. And so who's on that team is, we're going to look at data to determine that. So it's not a person necessarily, it's what is the data saying so that you're fair. Because when you start putting a name and a face to every single position, then it becomes very difficult, and you need an objective way to be able to say, these are the recommendations based on X, and then we do the people work around that, and you help people, if they're not going to be in those positions, you help them get to other positions. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that the people, but we're going to let data drive that conversation, and data includes feedback and input from the stakeholders around that work. Mm-hmm.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is, for the record, my name is Reverend Althea Green.
Yes.
Represent District 2 and Board Chair. Please share a snapshot of a previous experience where you successfully created and implemented an academic success plan that met the needs of all students. And when I say the needs of all students, that's including your gifted population, your special needs, all students.
Yes, ma'am. So when I was here before, I think I talked about, Board Commissioner McKissick, about our 3-year academic recovery plan for Atlanta Public Schools, and it had 3 components. And so the charge was to create, how are we going to recover from the lost time and work for kids as a part of the pandemic? So I designed and implemented with my team a 3-year academic recovery plan, and it had 3 components. The first component was a universal screener for reading and math, and a universal screener for behavioral mental health support. And so we started with that universal screening because you have to have data on where kids are in reading and math, and we implemented that 3 times a year, and we did it pre-K to 12. Because often you see in school districts you do pre-K 5, 6, 8, and you don't typically include high school. So we started with that and did that for pre-K 12 for reading and math, for a universal screener for both mental health and for academics. And then the second component was during the summer, what we did was we did a full school day for elementary, middle, and high school focused on, in the morning, academic support for reading and math. And then in the afternoon, we did what we call power up programming, so we could extend learning for kids around IB, the arts, around STEM, so that kids got the best of both worlds for a full school day, which provided parents with support as well. Every student was invited to be a part of the summer academic recovery. So even if you were a student with disabilities, we have extended learning year. They were able to participate in the student with disabilities extended learning year, but they were also able to participate in the Academic Recovery Academy in the afternoon. And then the third component also focused on implementation of a school-based intervention block, class, or course for every single school in the district. If you were an elementary school, you were required to have 30 minutes of intervention for math or reading based on our screener. And so if you were a middle school, you had either a 45-minute academic block focused on math and reading, and you also had high school. So in high school is a little bit different because kids have unique courses based on the content. And so what we did was we provided support courses. So if I'm a 9th grade student and I'm taking Algebra 1 as a part of my schedule, we also required schools to offer a support course that goes along with it so that we could fill in some of the gaps that students had in their schedule and still not take away from their Algebra 1 time or the geometry time or their Algebra 2 time. And so I want you to know that as a part of our intervention block, let's talk about our English language learners. And so I know that you all have about 13% English language learners, which is very similar to Atlanta Public Schools. And so what we did was, for all kids in the intervention block, they either got intervention or they got enrichment. So if you were a gifted student, you went to enrichment during that 30 minutes, and if you were intervention and support for reading and math, you went to intervention. So we met the needs of all students. Our English language learners also had that same intervention block, 30 minutes a day, and so we used different programming for them. So we used Lexia and Dreambox, which we know were research-based programs that support English language learners. And so that intervention block met the needs of every student, because if you were required to be intervention, you got that, and if you didn't need intervention, you got support. And so every single child in elementary school, middle school, and high school that needed intervention support, you got that. If you were a middle schooler who didn't need intervention in middle school, you got an enrichment course, because middle schools have individual courses like electives. And so what I'll say is that's how we included every single student in our 3-year academic recovery plan, because the students were at the heart of the plan. So we thought of everything to ensure that no child was left behind.
I want to go a little deeper.
Yes, ma'am.
Because as a former educator who's still certified in special ed and elementary, can you just briefly share with me, because I'm still on this success plan snapshot, of your experience in working with the special needs population.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so as the Chief Academic Officer, I oversee student support services, which is students with disabilities. And so our work with students with disabilities focus around our specially designed instruction. And so all of our special ed students have a comprehensive IEP that is aligned to the goals and their needs identified. We focus in Atlanta Public Schools on co-teaching, so that we have the special education teacher and the general ed teacher together to support students with disabilities. And so as we built our success plan, we ensured that our special education teachers and our special education support were a part of that and helped to inform how we were going to meet the needs of our students. And so what we loved is, even though students with disabilities had an IEP, they still got to attend the intervention block. And so they got additional intervention block, and then they had their IEP goals and the support. But that is the work that we've done in special education, and I just want to take a moment to brag that we just got the NAEP assessment results back, which is the test, National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the nation's report card for urban education. Our 8th grade special education students in reading performed the highest of any 8th graders in any urban district that takes TUDA. And so that goes to the work that we've done around specially designed instruction and the work that we've done around making sure that our goals for in the IEPs are aligned to the standards and that kids get what they need based on those needs. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
How involved are the teachers who have to implement this work in this process from the beginning to the end?
Absolutely.
And you said something about, because teachers are so accustomed, districts tell them what to do, and they may not be the best practices. But they find themselves having to teach in isolation the way they know that the children learn best. So how involved are the teachers in the processes that you're talking about in your implementation?
Absolutely. So what we started with, we have in Atlanta, we have a teacher advisory. So that teacher advisory, there is one teacher from every single school, elementary, middle, and high school, on that teacher advisory. So you know that it's pretty large. And so we took the plan to the teacher advisory. We got the elementary teacher perspective because it looks different. We got the middle school teacher perspective and it looks different. And we also got the high school perspective because it looks different. So before we rolled it out, we did meet with the, we started with the board and then of course the principal advisory, but the teacher advisory is who we got feedback on. And it's very interesting, throughout the process, we continued to get feedback because we meet with our teacher advisory every single month. The superintendent does, and as a part of the superintendent's cabinet, and I was responsible for the teacher advisory as the chief academic officer. That sat in my division. So that's how we got feedback on the plan. And of course, throughout the plan, teachers are very vocal about which portions they don't like, which portions they think should be different. And so we try to be, we try to support teachers while still keeping the focus on the implementation that we know helps kids, and we try to make sure that every practice that we embedded was scientifically research-based. So it was used with all kids, regardless of, kids with specific learning needs, English language learners, economically disadvantaged. So we tried to bring to teachers from the beginning research-based best practices so that they knew that we were not bringing something that we were confident based on research worked, and they were able to give us feedback.
Thank you.
I am Stephanie Love, District 3,
Yes. Good morning.
and I have a question for you. How will you keep the board informed and engaged on needs and issues and academics and operational performance of the entire school system?
Okay. Absolutely. So my role as superintendent is to first make sure that the 9 of you, there are never any surprises about this school district. That is the first thing, because I need to protect you all from any things that you are not aware of, because your constituencies are coming to you, asking you questions about everything. So that's the first thing. The way that I would do that, number one, I would start with, okay, we're gonna have great relationships, because I'm gonna build relationships with each and every one of you individually, because you're all unique, and you all have unique areas that you represent. So we're gonna start there. Every week, I'm going to send a board update, so that you, whether it's to your phone, whether it's the computer, whatever way is best for you, you're gonna get a weekly update on the happenings in the district. We will try to make sure it's very comprehensive, but it's not long, because you don't have time to read all that. But I will give you the highlights about what's happening in the major areas of the district. The second thing is we're gonna have one-on-ones constantly, and I would like those one-on-ones to not always be at the board office. I love to go out to lunch. I love to go to dinner. I'd love to have some time with you to talk about the issues, and not in a formal setting, so that we do build relationships. And so that needs to happen at least once, or no more than, fewer than at least twice a month. Then after that, okay, during our board one-on-ones, that's when I'll be able to listen, but I'll be able to update you as well, because you're gonna have specific questions about what I send out each week. We're going to do that. And then, of course, before every board meeting, I would like to, and I know that we can only pull 2 together in Tennessee, so we have to do, anytime we pull everybody together, it's a meeting, I know that. But what I wanna do is make sure that you are informed. My cell phone, of course, from my 9 bosses, my cell phone, and hopefully it'll be a new 901 area code, that I will be getting information for you all. You'll be texting me, we'll be texting, we'll be talking, so that you're always informed. And so, to your question about engagement, I also want to say that you are all the decision-making body of the district. And so our engagement is key. If we're not in lockstep, the district can't be successful. And so each month, what we do in Atlanta, which I love, and I know that you all have KPIs, we have student outcomes focused governance in Atlanta Public Schools. And so 90 minutes of every board meeting, and it's a part of the Council of Great City Schools, where we focus on academics, we focus on student performance as a district. The board gets data reports on the school district in reading and math, and the goals are set by the board. So if you want to know about literacy, numeracy, college and career, if you want to know about the profile of a graduate, what we do in Atlanta, and I know you all have early literacy, you have CCTE, you have priorities, then that means that at each board meeting, we need to have presentations on that, and I need to lead that conversation as the superintendent, to be able to provide you with data ahead of time, so that you get a chance to look at some of the data, and you can draft your questions about that, but also at the meetings, talking about academics. And I know that school districts are not just about academics, but teaching and learning is our core business in a school district. And so we would have presentations during my one-on-ones with me, but during the board meetings, we also need to have that transparent conversation with you about how our district is doing academically and how our district is doing business-wise, so that everyone is on the same page about what direction we're going. And you can only get better when you lay it out there and say, here's where we are, and here's where we need to go from here, and here's what we're doing about it based on that information.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, ma'am.
By our district being so large, there is bound to be a situation that you are caught off guard. How will you inform the board when you get this situation?
So we're going to have a group text, a group me chat, and I'm going to be able to text you really quickly. And I'm going to work with communication so that we make sure that we send you an email update. So what we do in Atlanta, I love, and I think I would love to bring that here, is there are always crises in a school district and things that happen. What we do is the communications department will draft a daily email of updates of crises that happened in the school district. So you will have those in writing, and you will get those to your phone as well if you're not near your email. And for things that are immediate, you're gonna get phone calls really quickly. So I can say, Commissioner Love, this is what's happening, X, Y, and Z, if it's specific to you. And then the entire board will get the full list of what happened for every crisis that happened that day. Because things are happening at the speed of light in a school district, small or large, and that's how we'll keep you all informed. When you go to bed at night, you should know what happened in Memphis-Shelby County, and then when I call you or text you as soon as that happens, when my team should be informing me immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Again, I'm Kevin Woods. I represent District 4 here in Memphis-Shelby County School. My question is one that's budget and finance related. The next superintendent of this district will inherit close to a $2 billion budget, with a substantial percentage of that budget tied to COVID-related funding that will soon go away. My question for you is, what is the largest budget that you have directly managed or been responsible for at least those outcomes? We'd like for you to also provide an example of investments, particularly difficult changes you may have had to make that impacted that team, your overall organization's outcomes. I would love to hear more about your budgetary experience. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, again, as the Chief Academic Officer, I drive the academic strategy for the district's $1.6 billion budget in Atlanta. But more specifically, as a Chief Academic Officer, I manage one of the two largest budgets in the school district, which is about $55 million. And then, of course, on top of that, my ESSER dollars that were given to the Division of Academics was $104 million. And so, as a part of all of those budgets, everything starts with the board goals. And so our spend and our functions, everything in our budget is tied to the goals the board has laid out. So even in my division, every time we are making budgetary decisions, if they don't align to the board goals, then we have to make quick transitions in how we're spending our dollars. As a chief in the district, we're always having to reduce cost at the central office level in order to streamline and provide more support to schools. And so that conversation is ongoing each and every year, and it's difficult when you work at the central office because everyone wants more support to go to schools, and you have to have those conversations. What I'll say to you is, being in Atlanta, even as a CAO, but before that I was an associate superintendent, helping principals to manage their budgets, but I also helped the school district when they had to make tough decisions about streamlining schools in order to have more money in our $1.6 billion budget. We had lots of schools throughout the district that were under-enrolled, and it pulled on our finances. And so as a part of the work, working with the chief financial officer, and of course being the academic person, looking at outcomes in schools and making decisions about which schools need to close, which schools could be consolidated so that we save money. And so as a part of being a CAO, every one of those decisions, I'm sitting at the table, informing the chief financial officer, informing the chief operation officer around those budgets. And so my budgetary work, again, is everything that happens for academics drives the strategy for that $1.6 billion budget. I know that Memphis has the $150 million, drop off in ESSER dollars, and that's gonna be key tough decisions around what do we do. But what I'll tell you is the last place you start is the classroom. That's right. Because you want to maintain the integrity of what's happening. What I know about Memphis is that you all spent, I think you all hired about 700 plus teacher assistants to reduce the teacher-student ratio. That's not where you start when you're trying to downsize the budget, and we've had to downsize in Atlanta Public Schools, but we started with the central office and looked at those duplicative types of things that I talked about earlier. We started with spending on stuff that we don't necessarily need, and we can go to community partners and get. We can get grant money. We can get partners to help us fund some of that. And so every one of those decisions, I've been a part of that and informed that process, but I want to say to you, we have to do a deep dive on what are the impacts. So everything related to the budget is it making a difference and for who? And so that's how we're making decisions around our budgetary costs. But again, that $1.6 billion budget is very similar to Memphis's 1.2 outside of your ESSER dollars. And again, I drive the strategy that leads that budget.
So quick follow-up.
Yes.
Particularly around outcomes.
Yes.
You make an investment and you make a bet on academic outcomes. At what point, as superintendent, are you willing to pivot and come back to tell the board that that was an investment that shouldn't have been made and we want to go in a different direction?
So I think you have to have a very transparent data review process. And so that is established with you all, helping to understand. But sometimes you have to have, when you have stakeholder engagement that's ongoing, you're gonna know from stakeholder input, you're gonna know by the data. So if there's a strategy that we've invested in, for example, typically change takes time, and the minimum time is about 3 years. And you want something to be implemented at a high level so that you have some robust data. But there are times when you find that things are not what you thought they were, and you have to make a change. But you have to have a process to pivot because you're impacting people and you're impacting kids. And so I think working with you all as a superintendent, when we're making an investment, we're gonna have a timeline and a consistent process for reviewing where we are. We typically, in Atlanta, review each month, and the questions come from the board, are we sticking with this strategy? So every month, we are ready to be able to say to the board, okay, we're going to pivot based on X, but they want the data and what we've done to engage before we pivot. Anything related to safety, we're gonna pivot immediately. But academics takes time. And so working with you all, we will have the timeline to say, we're gonna invest in extended school day for additional 30 minutes. And so we're asking that you give us 2 to 3 years so that we have robust data and that we are able to implement exactly what we've invested in so that when we make a decision to pivot, we have all the data in front of us. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you consider an academic audit?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely, an academic audit. And that's, you all asked for an academic visionary, and we start with academics. Yes, ma'am, and I would bring in the Council of Great City Schools to come in and take a look at the different layers of academics. Again, I've been a part of an academic audit with Little Rock, Arkansas, as a part of the Council of Great City Schools team, where we went in and talked to everybody in the academics division, but we started with the board. And then we looked at every layer, every program, looked at every piece of data for every student in the district, from academic to discipline data, to student support data, students with disabilities data. And I definitely support an audit because making any changes, you can't make changes until you look under the hood and figure out exactly what's going on. You have initial data, but I would absolutely request board support for an academic audit, and for the Council of Great City Schools, the superintendent and the board request that. So I absolutely would do an academic audit.
Ask the follow-up.
Yes, ma'am.
So to Commissioner Wood's point,
Yes.
you're clifting off of ESSER funding and having to make really tough decisions. And so if you were fortunate to come in the role of a superintendent, knowing what you're walking into, how would you balance with your 3 focus areas? You're gonna have 3 things that we want you to focus on. I'm just saying, for example, coming in, clifting,
Yes.
how do you prioritize those 3 things? Because you mentioned a lot, but we know walking in. So just speak briefly to that.
So again, I'll go back to, you all set the priorities. And so the board sets the priorities, and so that's what I prioritize. And so in looking at the budget, and I think I've said this, we say this in Atlanta, the pie is the pie is the pie, which is how you slice it. And so you drive the priorities for the district. And so that's how I would prioritize it. And so aligning, knowing that we're going to be coming off of this ESSER cliff, you are prioritizing early literacy. You have support in schools already to support that. You have additional teacher assistants. You're also prioritizing teacher retention and recruitment. You're prioritizing that. And so the budget adjustments need to be made in alignment with that. So your priorities is what I will use in order to shape that budget with stakeholder feedback, starting with you, and that's how we will prioritize. But you all said you want to get kids reading. You said academics was your number one priority, Board Member Green. Academics, you said the third grade commitment, Board Member McKissick, you said was a focus area for you. And so again, your priorities would drive how we shape that budget.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Mauricio Calvo.
Good morning.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
I can, yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So, and I understand that you're saying that the board obviously will set the priorities, but obviously you are the academic expert. How you reconcile when those difference between the priorities that the board sets might be different than from yours? Well, how would that conversation go?
So our relationship is key, and I'm going to always bring data to the table for you to look at, because I need to provide you with research and the data behind the recommendation that I'm making from an academic standpoint. I am the instructional leader of this school district, and so I'm going to give you all the information. I'm going to give you all the research and all of my experience of what has worked. Over my 30-year career, I have gained a robust toolkit of academic and leadership best practices that have been proven to work in an urban school district. And so I will bring those things to the table, but it's going to start with the data, because that's what drives everything that we do, and again, the research. And so my job is to work with each of you so that we can align on that. But it's also about building trust. If you select me for the leader, you know, I am committed to doing what we need to do for kids, and you'll be bringing me in to make decisions that are in the best interest of children. And so I know that we will work together. Even if we are looking at priorities differently, we can work and bring consensus based on the data and where we said we're trying to go. And so my job is to bring that to you. We want to get here, as you say, Board Member Woods, our North Star. I'm supposed to help you get to that North Star, because I'm supposed to help bring the strategy to you of how we're going to get there and what we're going to prioritize. Sorry. Okay.
Excuse me, everyone, I'm sorry. We failed to explain that Board Member Calvo is actually out of the country, and that's why he's on screen. That conflict only came when we had to move the dates because of the winter storm, and it was travel that was already set. And so that's the explanation, because I can see the looks on faces like, why is he on the screen? He's out of the country, and so he's able to participate by screen. So thank you, everyone.
And with that, Mr. Calvo may also can't see the clock. I think we've allocated 2 hours. So colleagues, continue to think about that on your follow-up question as well. I know we've gotten through 4 colleagues, and we have a round of questions that we want to get to. Thank you.
Thank you. So please, I think it's my turn next, but I just want to make sure that no more follow-up questions on that.
It's yours.
Great. All right. Well, good morning again, Ms. Brown.
Good morning.
Mauricio Calvo, District 5.
Yes.
You know, during your December public interview, you talked about how you are servant leadership, your style about, you know, pulling out in the strengths of individuals and how you motivate your team that way. Today, could you please share a specific example in your team management experience and how you have resolved differences whenever those arose? Just a specific example, please.
Okay. Yes, so anytime you're in leadership, you know, people don't always agree, and there are differences amongst team members about what direction we're going, how we should go about it. And so, so I'll give an example of, I lead, you know, assistant superintendents in Atlanta for academics. And so, you know, when you have strong leaders with strong ideas, sometimes they are going in a different, they're going in the same direction, but they're not going together. And so you cannot work separately. So I've had to, when it comes to, of course, leveraging strengths, I understand my team's strengths very clearly. We have a roadmap of all the strengths of my teams. And so whenever there is a conflict, I start there. How do I leverage what they do well so that I can lead this conversation? So for example, there is a team member who is very futuristic in their thinking, and they may not be the nuts and bolts of how you get there. And then there's another team member who is a strong leader, who is all about responsibility, getting it done, and wants to get it done when they want to get it done. And it creates conflict because they come at the work very differently. I have to have, when I have conversations and I meet with them one-on-one individually to first understand where the conflict is, and I've seen it, and then I pull them together because I believe that you have to bring people together at the table, and I'm the one that sets the culture for being able to be upfront and honest, but respectful of our differences. And so I've had to mitigate colleagues who have had dissension. And one thing I am is I'm very upfront and honest, but I always start the conversation with, here's what I know about you and what you do well, and here's what I know about you. Here is the issue, and I'm also listening. And I'm listening for each person's perspective, and then I'm always trying to find the win-win for both of them, because ultimately you're trying to win for kids. And so you have to navigate people's personalities, but knowing their strengths and how they show up with the work is what guides me. And so I had two of my team members that, you know, it was a very difficult conversation to have with them about their differences, but my job is to keep them focused on the main thing and helping them leverage what they do well so that they can work together. And so I've had to do that in some pretty tough conversations. At the end of the day, neither one of the team members may have been, you know, happy, because you don't get all of what you want, but you get what we're trying to do as a team and what the goal of the school district is. And so I will use that as an example, because you can have leaders who think you should go about it a certain way, and when you're working on a team, you have to be able to listen and be empathetic, and sometimes people are not. They want to do it their way, and they don't want to come together. So I've had to mitigate that by keeping the focus on the main thing, but also, again, reminding them of their strengths and how I need their strengths to be able to do the work we're trying to do for kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up.
Yes, ma'am.
You, in your response, you said the mediator. I'm choosing my words very wisely. What if you try to remediate and that doesn't work? How will you get the main focus across then?
So thank you for bringing up mediator, and I think I'll probably say facilitator of the conversation as well. And sometimes, in some instances, it's not successful. And then you have to have separate, direct conversations about why we're here. And so you have to set strong expectations, because sometimes people still disagree. How would I handle it then? Then I'm gonna go deeper individually with each person. Setting expectations, resetting the goals and the focus, and a plan and process for how we're going to support them in getting their focus back on the main thing. Because as a part of expectations for our leaders, one of them is to be supportive and respectful and collaborate. That is an expectation. And if they're not doing that, then when those tough conversations that I have directly with each individual leader, and then we put some things in place to help them get there. And then if they're not able to get there, you have to have other, you have to provide them with other options to be able to move to the next thing if they're not able to get to the main thing. Because you've done the coaching and the support and you've leveraged the strengths. And if that still doesn't work, and then you also can get support from other departments like Human Resources to help you, because you can't do this work alone. So Human Resources has support for employees, but as their immediate supervisor, then I have to have those tough conversations about why we're here, what we're trying to do together, and my expectations moving forward, but how I'm gonna support you in reaching that. And then it becomes, for me, it's either a can't or a won't at that point. Thank you.
Keith Williams, academic achievement is the question in the area.
Yes.
Across the country, teachers express being underpaid and unappreciated. What will you do to retain and grow our teacher talent pool? If you have direct experience increasing teacher retention, please speak to that as well.
Okay. Oh, yes, teachers are definitely underpaid across the country. You're absolutely correct, and underappreciated. So what I'll say is, very much for teachers, compensation is at the heart of it. We know that it starts because people have to take care of themselves and feed their family. Looking at the compensation structure for teachers, I think, is one of the first things you can do, because you're going to attract people to a district based on, and we are honest, I was a middle school teacher. I went to the school district that was paying the highest at the first time. I really was. I love Atlanta Public Schools, but when you compare them to other surrounding districts, they were paying the most. And I started there. And so we have to look at compensation. You can't get compensation right in 1 year. You have to phase in. And so again, the pie is the pie is the pie, as we say in Atlanta. Are we prioritizing recruiting teachers? Are we willing to put our money where our mouth is and do that over the course of time? Phased in approach of raising their salaries a little bit each year versus all at one time, because we don't have dollars to do that. And so that's one way to recruit. The other way, of course, is the way we brand our school district and the way we, on the inside and the outside, tell our story. Because sometimes in our school district, when we're frustrated, the people that do the work every day talk about it badly. And people, when they want to apply for a job, money, and then they call their friend that works in that district. Girl, what do you think? What do you think? That's what they do. I was a teacher. Don't come here. Don't come to this school. That's what happens. And so we have to also commit to working with this wonderful communications team here in Memphis-Shelby County Schools to be able to tell our story and highlight the things that we do well, but be honest with people about you're stepping into an urban environment. And as superintendent, if I'm selected, I'll be meeting with every new teacher if you do need new teacher orientation, and they will see my face and hear my voice and tell them, you are signing up for great, hard work, so that they're not mistaken about what they're signing up for. The other thing about recruitment is that teachers want to know that they have a voice in their school district and in their school. Because we, like you said, Board Member Williams, we give teachers lots of mandates. We do, that's education a lot. And so they need to have a voice in their school, and the culture of our school district needs to be, of course, teacher and leader focused. And so we build that culture around making sure that teachers, when you recruit them, you pay them as best you can, you commit to that over time, you get a narrative out there where people want to be a part of it, and you work with the school leaders because they're the ones recruiting teachers too. It's not just the central office. Teachers go to schools for leaders. They go to schools for leaders, and if they believe in that leader, they're going to come. So how do we continue to leverage our great leaders and continue to build their capacity so that they can attract Because how your school is run, what's happening in your school, a teacher is going to be drawn to that. Also, teachers need pathways for growth. We often get them in the school district, and then how do we constantly give them lots of professional learning about what we want them to do in the classroom. How do we give them professional growth for themselves? Because teachers have many aspirations. I know, Commissioner Williams, that you stay in the classroom for 40 plus years, and your wife is still there, I think, and so. And so, you know, you were committed to staying in the classroom, and that is fantastic. But teachers also want the opportunity to expand their skill set. If they ever want to go into leadership, if they ever want to do something different, they want that opportunity, and we should be committed to providing pathways. If you want to be a coach, if you want to be something else that you want to expand your impact on kids, we should be providing that. And last but not least, teacher wellness, which you don't hear a lot about because we focus on all of our student wellness, but adult wellness is real. And adult trauma is very real post-pandemic for all of us. We all struggled being at home on a computer when we've never done that before, not having any interaction with kids or people. And so, you know, one of the things I love that we do that I would definitely bring to Memphis-Shelby County Schools is that every single school has a Zen room. We use funding, and so every school you have those you all go to the mall, and you have those massage chairs that massages your calves and massages your back, okay? You know what I'm saying? And so every school has a Zen room, and principals are charged with allowing teachers time to go into the Zen room so they can woosah, sit in a chair, massage, it's lights, and so we use our funding, some of our funding, to be able to do that with ESSER. But you can get grants, you can get partners to help provide every single school with a Zen room for teachers. And that's one of the ways we help with their wellness. We work well with human resources, so that human resources is about recruiting, retention, but we also got to be about wellness. And what are we doing for teachers from a wellness perspective? And how do we invest in stipends? Because even if you can't pay teachers, you know, as much as you want to pay them, how do you embed stipends into some of the tough work that they do at schools that are tough, at schools that require more? What do those stipends look like? We did a lot of work around raising the stipends I met a teacher who was, I think, the basketball coach and was going to the playoffs. I think she's right there. And so, you know, that stipend, you know, what they get paid, how do we look at investing in stipends that go up a little bit? If you can't do it with benefits and all the things related to that, can you pay a little bit more in stipends? And I think that's how you recruit, retain, and once we have them, we got to support them.
I have a follow-up question. You hit on this a little bit. Around using our communications team to highlight our assets. I think it goes to a bigger question about how would you change the narrative so that Memphis-Shelby County Schools is a great place to work?
So first of all, I'm going to be out front because I am the leader of Memphis-Shelby County Schools, and so I'm going to be out front telling our story. And communications, stakeholders, the board, you all are going to give us those key points that every one of you all can have, that you go out and talk about as a board member, and it's really consistent so that everybody gets the same message about what we're doing great. I am going to be part of the face of Memphis-Shelby County Schools, and people need to hear from the superintendent. What are we doing well? What are our challenges? Being very visible and vocal and advocate for Memphis-Shelby County Schools, because you see every superintendent thinks their district is great, but you don't always see the superintendent telling it. And so as a part of that, that's what I would do. We would also work with communications, because I'll just say your website is amazing. The fact that you're able to have it, I told the communications department that they do a great job with the translations for our English language learner families. They do a really great job. And I think the Instagram and all of that is great, but I think we could take it to the next level and highlight those key academic pieces for the district, those key things you talked about that you wanted to hear about facilities, about academics, how do we leverage that for every social media platform so that you flood Tennessee and you flood everywhere about Memphis-Shelby County Schools? And you work with the partners, because the partners tell the story as well. They talk about how we collaborate. They talk about what they see. They talk about the work that we're doing. So how do we empower our partners to be able to help us tell the story? Because we as a district can't do it by ourselves. It has to be the community, the teachers, the leaders, the community partners, the faith-based community, when they are, in the pulpit talking. Do they talk about Memphis-Shelby County Schools and what we're trying to do to move kids? And that's where people are. People are in church. They want to hear the pastor talk about what's happening. And so there are so many layers of that to get that narrative out, and just being upfront and honest about what's happening, but also having a plan and what we're going to do about it, because people want to know what's happening, but they also want to know, how are you mitigating it? What are you doing, and what help do you need?
Just a short follow-up. And so when we talk about retaining, recruiting, how would you work with the teacher unions, which is a key voice to helping with messaging?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. First of all, Tennessee has very strong teacher unions, and so does Memphis. And so as a part of the advisory, teacher advisory, they would be the other advisory, working with the teachers so that they understand the teacher labor unions. I think it's Memphis-Shelby County Education Association is one of them, and there are others. So they would have a seat at the table with the superintendent first about what are they hearing from their members about why they don't come to Memphis-Shelby County Schools. But once they're here, what do we need to do differently for them? So they would be an absolutely leading voice, and thank you for bringing them up, because they are essential. I met a young lady yesterday who was one of the voices for that, and she shared some of the concerns that they brought. And so they would help us come up with a strategy for how you recruit. But we also have to work with our Human Resources Department and pair our teams together with the teacher unions so that they can help guide the strategy. Just like we ask teachers to guide the academic strategy, the unions would help guide. So what do we think works for teachers? What does the messaging need to be? What do we need to be doing differently? And how do we help them to be the ambassadors? So we can leverage the teacher unions to be the ambassadors for recruitment to Memphis-Shelby County Schools, but we got to empower them with information about what are we going to do once they get here and how we're going to support them. Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Let me say good morning again.
Good morning.
So my question is concerning staff relations.
Yes.
How would you ensure that students, teachers, and staff feel safe? And also, if applicable, what are some specific examples of your experience, such as policies or programs and policies that have influenced your response?
Okay, let's start with staff relations. For students, teachers, and staff, everyone in our school districts should feel safe. Every student should go to a school where they're safe. They feel safe, they're welcomed, and they are nurtured every single day. Teachers should feel the same thing. They should feel safe, warm, and welcomed each day, and of course our staff. And so as it relates to safety, first of all, what are our processes and procedures for how we create safe environments? And so I, of course, been riding with one of the officers, and we've been talking about safety, and you all have done some great work in creating safe spaces. The processes and procedures of how you go about making sure, I know that your middle schools and high schools have officers. I know that you have officers that kind of float at the elementary school level, so there's some presence there to help people feel like they're safe. But also you have strong processes in place. And so I think at the heart of safety is the processes and procedures in place, but are they being followed? And so that's what creates safe spaces. But safe space, that's physical safety. What about social emotional safety for staff, teachers, and students? You know, are we respectful? which is one of your core values? Do we value their voice? Do we value buy-in? Do we show empathy to students, staff, and teachers? Because there's an emotional safety as well. Are they able to make mistakes and not feel as though that is the career breaker at that moment? And so you have to create physical safety, and you have to create social emotional safety. I'll talk about, for students, we have our social emotional or mental health screener, the BAS-3-BEST, and that helps us understand how kids are feeling and what we need to do differently to support them. And so policies, I think, you know, the policy is only as good as it's implemented. And so we have, I think, having a strong safety requirements, I think having strong processes and procedures in place, and supports and professional learning for all of our stakeholders to be able to help us with that. But everybody has to help create a safe space for our school district, our community, our stakeholders, our teachers, our parents. Everyone plays a role in that. And so in Atlanta, we work very closely with community partners around creating safety and violence prevention. We just started, we had not been doing a lot of work around that. So what we did was we brought together over 60, 70 community partners to help with violence prevention so that parents could be signed up with programming for their kids. They could get access to how to address violence with your students and how to support them. And so that's one way that we decided to try to reach out to the community, because we can't do this work alone. The school district can't do everything. And we have wonderful partners in Atlanta, but we also have wonderful partners here in Memphis that I've met throughout the week. And so personally, I know that my team led the leveraging of that work around helping, you know, and I'll just be very candid. One of the things that they also did as a part of that violence prevention work was we helped parents understand about gun safety. And we know that that is not something we want to talk about a lot in schools, but it's real out here. And so we had different organizations come with parents, gave them tools and tips to help their kids so that they can you know, come away from violent behaviors and how to get immediate support for that. And so that's what we've just done recently in Atlanta. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. What grades would you start in to get the kids interested in gun safety?
Honestly, I think you have to start in elementary school because it's the foundation. And there's a way that you can have conversations with little kids in a way that's appropriate for their age group. Because kids in middle school and high school, they were in elementary school, and sometimes those behaviors start and those mindsets start in elementary school. And so given all of the different distractions that many kids have, and our kids have now, I would start in elementary school, and I think I would leverage some of the professionals to help us. And because we have some of our officers, we have our school resource officers just like you all do, and they partner with our elementary schools, and they come and they read to the kids, and they start that process of building relationships. I think we have to find the appropriate programming so that we say the right things to kids at an early age, but you start that early in elementary school so that when they become middle and high school students, we have built a foundation in them understanding about how to resolve conflict. How do we teach kids those explicit skills? We teach reading, math, science, and social studies. You gotta teach that explicitly as well, but I believe we need to start in elementary school, honestly, because even at age 10, you're in elementary school and many times, and you're about to transition to middle school. So elementary is where I would start, but it would be grade level appropriate for the grade the student is in, so that they can understand what that looks like and then progressively go up. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Amber
Good morning.
Hewitt Garcia, District 8 Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
In your materials, you shared that you co-led a strategic initiative that resulted in 60% of the elementary schools exiting the state improvement list. Can you share more about the initiative and your key takeaways?
Yes, ma'am. So the partnership around our turnaround schools. So those are the schools in Atlanta that are part of our turnaround work, and those schools have been identified by the state of Georgia. They are in needs improvement, very similar to Memphis, the CSI schools. And so we partnered with our turnaround office, which sits in the Division of Performance. And so, of course, turnaround is about academics and academic support. And so I worked with the Chief Performance Officer. And so what we came up with is a tiered approach to supporting particular schools, if they were elementary, middle, and high school. And so that tiered approach provided things that all the schools would get that were in turnaround support specifically, whether it was a weekly visit, whether it was specific coaching, whether it was access to more professional learning. All the turnaround schools received that. And then as the tiers went up, we got more and more specific about what each school tier would get. And we implemented that. And so we looked at the best practices. We worked with the state of Georgia to leverage some of their best practices, but we structured that plan so that every school got what they needed to be able to leverage the academic strategies so that they could be removed from the list. But it's not about just the list, it's about improving student academics and outcomes. And so each of those schools, of course, we had 15 traditional schools on the list. And so because of our tiered approach to support, and I also want to say as a part of the academic strategy, we also had the community piece in each of the tiers about how we would leverage communities in schools. And I don't know if you have communities in schools here, but I think you do, but we leverage those community wraparound supports. And so in addition to the academic supports for the tiers, we also focused on wraparound supports for the tiers because you can't do them separately. And so we had 15 traditional schools that were identified for CSI, and so the state of Georgia just notified us about a week and a half ago that 10 of those 15 have now exited the list, but that doesn't mean that there's still not more work to do. But so we provided a tiered approach, and it was a collaboration between performance and academics so that we could support those schools in helping them to no longer be identified and to help them keep that momentum going. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning
you.
again.
Joyce Doris Coleman, District 9.
Yes.
I have a question about our Budget and Finance
Yes, ma'am.
Department. MSCS has suffered decades-long challenge of having more than 500 million in deferred maintenance needs and unsuccessfully acquiring the needed funds from our funding bodies. How will you navigate the tough political terrain in securing the funding needed from our local, our state, and federal funding bodies? And if possible, provide specific examples of your experience in navigating this space.
Okay. So absolutely. So I think that 500 million piece is related to your infrastructure plan. And so you all have an infrastructure plan where you are now focused on all of that related to getting additional funding for your facilities. So first, starting with, I'll just leverage the work that you have started, because you've started some great work around looking at other funding options. And so there are grants that are available. So as superintendent, I will then be making partnerships with, like you said, the local, the state, because part of the superintendent's job is to advocate for what we need. And so providing, building those relationships, being very upfront and honest about what we need for kids, but leveraging the different funding sources. But our infrastructure plan will help drive that. And so all of the work that you all have been doing with your subcommittee work around having the goals laid out of what we're trying to achieve, excuse me, related to that $500 million that you've needed to take care of all of that. First of all, as a superintendent, working with the infrastructure team to set what are we trying to clearly achieve? What are we trying to achieve with our infrastructure plan? What are those sources that are available? And I am, along with others, bringing on others to help support this advocacy, because the superintendent is the main advocate with the local and state level, but we need additional support, additional voices around that. And so I'll be leveraging that as a part of our team to do that work. And so, needed funding, we need to look at all of the funding sources. And so again, I'll go to some of do we have grants that we're able to apply for to be able to leverage that? And so lean in on that piece. Working with the commissioners. And I know that the commissioners are who approve the budget here, but we're gonna have to work hand in hand with the commissioner, because the school district is a part of the city of Memphis. And so everyone should be buying in. And so leaning in, asking the commissioners to help commit to, getting people to commit to helping us secure funding, because we're all interested in providing environments for our kids where they can thrive. So as the chief academic officer, my work has not been directly in securing funding. I work very closely with the chief operation officer. I work very closely with our the legislative person in our district that helps to help secure additional funds. So I don't do that work directly. I just work in tandem with my colleagues who do that work. And so as a COO, when they bring recommendations, or the CFO, that they bring recommendations to the senior cabinet, I am a part of that conversation, and they are providing options for how we could go about addressing things like this $500 million deferred maintenance and needed funding. But again, navigating those political waters is about being present and being at the table with the leaders at the local and state level, because advocacy starts with the superintendent. Constantly keeping that at the forefront, talking about what we're already doing, but again, taking people back to what did we say we're trying to accomplish, and we're gonna need you to help us get there. Here's what we're gonna put in, here's what we can provide, but we cannot do it by ourselves. And so that political conversation is gonna take lots of conversations, lots of planning together, lots of talking through that, because all of this, it's about relationships and about having all of our things in order so that they understand exactly what we need. So again, I haven't done that work directly, but at the heart of politics is relationships and what you understand about the district, and being the voice, and also, getting the advocacy from you all. You all are the board members that help advocate for additional funding. You all have relationships, you're the elected officials, so we would do that work in tandem, because the superintendent can't do it, I can't do it by myself. You all will help leverage additional dollars, and you're the next layer of speaking to the local and the state legislature, because you're elected by the constituents, and this need for funding serves our constituents starting with students. If they really want Memphis-Shelby County Schools to have a chance, they've got to help, and we've got to push. We've got to push as a superintendent and a board.
Okay, at this time, we're going to take a couple of questions, because we would like to leave time for Ms. Brown to close us out. So we'll take a few questions. If you just have a random question, it won't be a follow-up. So just ask your questions enough so that it can be answered. Thank you.
In other words, brief and to the point. So if you had an opportunity to be the superintendent of Memphis-Shelby County Schools,
Yes, ma'am.
how would you structure CCTE so that students that graduate from MSCS will be able to enter into meaningful employment with all of the corporations that we have around us?
Absolutely. So First of all, when I come in, I would have to look at the lay of the land, because I can't automatically structure anything without understanding what you already have in place. I know that you all have standalone CCTE centers already here in Memphis-Shelby County Schools. I asked the question yesterday on our bus tour, does every high school offer CCTE? What are those pathways? And, you know, how are kids getting credentialed so that they walk out of the school with a credential to be able to go work at FedEx, to be able to go work at Delta Airlines, to be able to work at the new plant that's coming in East Tennessee, the Blue Oval, I think it's Ford F-150, the first electric truck. So first of all, I have to understand what you're already doing well before making any changes and talking to those CCTE teachers. So structuring it out is gonna be through, first of all, offering CCTE starting in middle school, because you want to first expose children, because in high school, CCTE is about them walking out so that they can walk into a job, into the workforce. So I would start that in middle school so that they get exposure to those workforce programs, so they understand what's ahead of them and what they can see the future, as you all say, for potential credentials. The next thing I would do is also make sure that there are enough offerings in every single high school that are aligned to the needs of the workforce today. Is it AVFT? Is it airplane maintenance? What are those key things that the workforce is requiring? Not what we say kids need, but what does the workforce in Memphis and in the world say that we should be putting kids out automatically with those skills and with those credentials? Is it IT? Is it computer science? And so structuring there to have every high school to offer those particular pathways, but also those partnerships, so that our kids get internships, so that when they walk out of Memphis-Shelby County Schools, they have internships in these pathways in CCTE, so that they already have some on-the-job experience before they even step out of Memphis-Shelby County Schools and graduate. And also the partners, bringing on many partners who can help get our kids credentialed. Partnerships, so that kids, while they are in school, can walk out with a credential where they can be hired day one. And also for, CCTE, I'll say is, do we have a pipeline? Do we have a pipeline? So that, because we have pipelines for different other options, do we have a pipeline for CCTE where it is really, really clear what we're trying to do? And can we get grant funding to pay for some of the tests? Because there's a lot of credentialing tests that our kids can't afford to pay for, and that cannot be a barrier. So there are Perkins funds that can be used, there are federal dollars that can be used so that we can pay for kids to take those credentialing assessments so that they walk out with that. And the last I'll say is dual enrollment, because dual enrollment also provides that opportunity. So how do you partner with institutions of higher learning and other institutions so that kids can dually enroll and get that experience while they're in school? That's how it would structure, increase access to it in middle school for exposure. The high schools provide more of it, very consistent, but it's aligned with what the workforce needs and what the companies are telling us they want in graduates. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Love, Board Member Woods. We'll check the time.
Ms. Brown, I do have a follow-up question from an earlier, sorry, just so I make sure, I have all my colleagues ask all their questions, the main question, right? Madam Chair? I want to make sure everybody has the
Just go ahead, just continue, ask your question.
Okay, so this is related to one of the when you were talking about the role of the superintendent selling, you communicating the message. You were talking about communicating with. We were talking about recruitment and of teachers and other things. Can you touch a little bit on the partnership and the collaboration with the media specifically, because oftentimes it's great to talk about the things that are working. How do you address these things when we address those things that are not working?
So first of all, you have to be transparent and honest about what's happening. And so the media is going to pepper the superintendent with questions because they want to know the good stories, but they also want to know the challenges. And so working with the media, having a positive relationship with the media, first of all, because it can be adversarial when you're leading a school district and there are challenges. So you have to be very careful about that, because you also get the narrative out there that the leader doesn't want to be asked tough questions and doesn't want to answer and talk about what we're doing. And so, being upfront and honest with the media, but working with the board about our key talking points of how we're going to talk about our challenges, but how we're going to talk about what we're doing about it. So I think you have to be upfront and honest, and you have to provide the media with the information that they need so they can help tell the story about the challenges. But as a superintendent, you cannot be afraid. I've watched several of you all's press conferences recently, and what I've noticed is, number one, I love the board is standing behind the current superintendent. I see you all standing right there, whether it's Board Member McKissick, you're in the back, or Board Chair Green, you're right there on the side. That's very helpful when the media is there. So it shows a united front when you're talking about challenges that are happening in the school district. But also what I noticed is that the superintendent answers the questions directly. Answers them directly, is honest about the challenges, but I love the fact they also say, but here's how you can help when you're telling that story.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, can I say one more thing? And I also think it's not just about the interview. The communications department also works to help keep the media informed. So there's a strategy that I love, that we do kind of a media sheet every day. And so we send out a media sheet to the board of different things that are happening, so that to the board and to the media, and we have a media relations person that works with us, and so the superintendent sends that through communications to the media that talks about challenging things, that talks about great things. So everything is not great in that report, but we do like a media report to the media from the school district. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question is about parents.
Yes, ma'am.
The parents send their children to school. We have a whole array of different parents who love and support their children differently.
Yes, ma'am.
How will you keep the parents informed?
So that is a great question, and you're absolutely right. In a school district that's urban, where I come from, there's a gamut of parents. One thing I know, being a leader, being a principal, being at the central office, is every parent communicates and advocates differently. Some send 3-page emails. I'm sure Board Member Woods would probably send 3-page emails. I just had to say that. Of all the facts. Sorry, don't hold that against me. But all the facts. And then you have parents who are going to call and tell you off. And you have parents who are focused on specific things. They advocate for their kids differently, but they're all advocating for what's best for their child. So the first thing about keeping parents informed is all of the stakeholders in the district's responsibility. Teachers, leaders, staff, all of us have to keep the parents informed. It just doesn't come from the school district, because guess who parents see first? Not here. They see their teacher, they see their leader. That's who they see. They see their staff member. So it has to start there. What are the expectations and what are the structures we put in place so that all schools feel empowered to be able to keep parents informed? What are the technology tools that we use to do that? Because most parents have a phone. You know, you may not always be able to reach them. So what are those technology pieces that we're using to keep parents informed? Is it a e-blast to parents who want to read all the information? Is it a robo-text that comes to their phone and it looks just like a letter? It looks like key points that parents get it to their phone and they can read it really quickly. How is that? We give them information, but I think that is a strategy that it has to start at the schoolhouse. How do we keep parents informed about what's happening with them on the ground? Because that's who they see every day. But as a school system, we've got to be able to have a strong communication system of how we keep parents informed of what's going on. Is it, like I said, your website is amazing for an urban district. It is broken out by meeting the needs of kids who don't speak English, and it's very, very informative. You use Instagram to reach those parents, and I know that you use, I think, Power School to help, and I think it helps, and we use something different. But that's the first piece, is communicating with parents. That has to be ongoing. Parents should not have information, and so is the school district. It's a partnership. Every stakeholder has a role in keeping parents informed, but you set the expectations as the superintendent. Here's the culture that we're trying to build. If these are our core values, we decide our core value is parents must be informed, then my job as a superintendent is to make sure there is a strategy and a process in place and that people are implementing that to ensure that parents are informed. I also want to say also about engagement, because we talk a lot about informing parents, but engagement is having parents at the table, because we can give them information, but also what are those structures for them to have a voice in what's happening in their school and in the school district. Thank you.
I don't have a 3-page email, but I do have a 3-page question for you here.
Okay.
Yeah, you just write it down. Yeah.
I gotta write it down.
I'm joking here. You've mentioned data-driven decisions quite a bit throughout today's conversation. As you know, COVID has had a huge impact on our families, our employees, and particularly our students. And we haven't had a chance to talk much, particularly about mental health. You know, you talk about the spiritual, emotional impact of our employees and particularly our students. I'm curious to know what will you do from a data-driven approach to help heal our communities, help heal our students. And particularly, you said that you can't do this work alone. You're coming from outside of Memphis, and we've heard that a lot. And so as you answer that question, what will you do to galvanize team members to help make a difference to say that you can continue to do this work for us as you come from Atlanta?
Thank you. So can we go? Perfect. So thank you very much. So absolutely. So we'll start with the data piece. And so again, I really believe in the screening process because our kids have been traumatized from COVID-19, and typically you don't have data on mental or behavioral challenges of kids. And so again, we implemented BASFRI-BEST, which allows the student to be able to give us information, the parent to give us the same information on the student, and the teacher. So we have a 360 approach for us to create a profile of if a student is at risk or extremely at risk for mental health behavioral challenges. And we implemented that because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so that's been a key piece of data that we've been able to use so that we could work with our community partners to provide support. But we also have the partners in the district, like our counselors and our psychologists and our support staff that help with that. So coming from outside of Memphis, again, Atlanta is a large urban district as well. And so I have to build relationships with the community partners that I know that can help us do this mental health work. In Atlanta, every single school has a mental health partner that helps, that provides the principal and the teachers immediate access to a mental health provider that can support our kids. And they also can support teachers. But building that coalition around what are our goals and our vision for wraparound mental health support. What is that? What does that look like for Memphis-Shelby County Schools? Once we set that, then I can then work with those community partners that I'll be meeting, getting to know, collaborating with, and sharing with them, here are some of our needs. And then working with them to help, how can we leverage that so that you can partner with us? That's a part of what happens, but that's relationship building. That's being available to meet. That's having the conversations, because sometimes it's about reaching out and asking, but also being open to them providing, saying, hey, we can do this work. Because it's not just the district sits on high and say, hey, we need you to do X. They are from Memphis. They deal and work with our kids every single day in the community. So they know this work probably even better, and they know it better than me. And so I would then have that coalition of keeping the focus on, what are we trying to solve for? What are we trying to do? What is the impact that we're trying to make? And how do we bring the community voices to the table to come up with the strategy to get there? And so that doesn't come solely from the superintendent. I am from the outside. But what I do is I love kids, and I love urban kids, and I want what's best for kids, and I'm going to make those decisions that are in the best interest of children. And everyone I've ever met that supports kids, if that's at the forefront, they're going to come to the table. But you got to be honest. You got to talk about what you're trying to do. You got to have, you got to be open to them coming to the table saying, hey, we think we could help you this way, and we got to be open to it, because we can't decide everything. Again, they spend more time with kids in the community just like we do. And so that's what I would do, is leverage those relationships. You all will help me with that, because you're from Memphis. You're on the board, and you know where those key pieces are, so that we can leverage, because board members will tell the superintendent now, hey, this is a great resource, look into that. And so that's very helpful for me, because I'll be leaning on you all and the community to help guide me in that way until I learn all the relationships and begin to build those relationships and create synergy around what we're trying to do.
Thank you for that, and that definitely answers the question regarding community partners.
Yes.
For the teachers and principals that are also listening to this conversation today, what message do you have for them?
So, yesterday I told the principals, I was a principal for 11 years, and I told them that that job probably was the hardest job that I had. But I failed to mention that teaching was also extremely hard. But I think teachers, to the teachers in Memphis-Shelby County Schools and the principals and leaders, your job is extremely hard. And what I want to say to you is, I've sat in both of those seats, so I understand exactly the vantage point. But please know that you are the linchpin to any of this working. We can have the best strategy, we can have the best ideas, but it doesn't happen without what happens at the schoolhouse with teachers and leaders. And so if I am selected as your next superintendent, your voice will matter. You will have a seat at the table. We will have a robust relationship with the teacher labor unions and the staff labor unions. We will have a robust, and we will have a teacher advisory where every single school has representation and has, a monthly meeting with the superintendent. The same for their principal advisory. And so you are the linchpin to everything happening in this school district, because if it doesn't happen at the schoolhouse, it doesn't happen. And so I look forward to working hand in hand with every teacher, every principal. And what I'll tell you is that we're going to work really, really hard to get everything right. But what we're going to do is we're going to work together. That's what we're going to do. Principals, teachers, labor unions, we're going to work together, because, again, everything happens in the classroom and at the school level for kids.
I have a new question. Is that okay? Okay. Improving literacy is one of our top priorities as a district. You've already shared that you're aware of that. Can you tell us about your experience and proven methodology and strategies to improve instruction and the outcomes, and how do those strategies align with what's happening with the work in Memphis-Shelby County Schools?
Okay. And so improving instruction and literacy, is that what you're, perfect, okay? And then alignment, okay? So, yes, so absolutely. So, literacy, and I said this yesterday, and so we do a lot of work around social justice and equity, But literacy is social justice. Every single child should be able to learn to read, and every single child can learn to read. And so my experience is extensive around improving literacy instruction. So first of all, you're aligning literacy as the foundation. Specifically, kids learn to read based on the science of reading. And the science of reading starts with phonics and phonemic awareness. Research says, and I know it to be true because it's been proven in Atlanta, the building block of reading is phonics, and so explicit instruction. And so what we did was we adopted the science of reading methodology, but we adopted resources for the teachers to be able to implement for kids. And so we utilize Foundations, which is a Orton-Gillingham methodology, and that methodology is about, movement and students understanding how sounds feel, look, but it's a proven methodology. And so we implemented Foundations, which is 30 minutes of explicit phonics instruction for every single kindergartner, first grader, and second grader in our district. And so because research says at a minimum you must have 30 minutes of explicit phonics, because kids have to know letters and they have to know sounds and how they blend together before they can begin to read. And so we implemented that in every single elementary school, and then we moved it to third grade, because after kids get it in second, you need to reinforce it, because again, we're trying to make sure that kids can read on grade level by the time they get to third grade. So that is the first thing that we've done around literacy, is explicit phonics instruction that is aligned to the science of reading. And so so that's K1, 2, and 3. And then as you get up, we have students, I know in our district and in other districts across the nation, we have district students who have matriculated through to middle school and high school that don't have a strong foundation in early literacy. And so what you have to do now is empower our middle school teachers and build their capacity around, those 5 areas of reading, so that they understand those 5 areas of reading, because most middle schools and high school teachers didn't sign up to teach reading unless you are, Board Member Williams, who I think you taught English, is that right? And so you sometimes expect kids to come with those foundational pieces. And so what we did for middle and high school is we are working to build the capacity of teachers so that they can have those same practices that are in elementary school. Because those practices, those best practices for teaching literacy in elementary school, are helpful in middle and high school, but they just look differently based on the text that you're using. And so we also implemented robust support for the other areas of reading. So you have phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, because the faster kids can read, the more that they can comprehend, comprehension and vocabulary. And so our focus around selecting any programming or any support or professional learning is all tied to those 5 pillars of reading. And so we started again with phonics. And so what we've seen is, which is why I've said several times that our kids were in the pandemic, and we implemented it at the first year of the pandemic. And so as we looked at our third graders, because they were in kindergarten, and we implemented that strategy, and we taught specific phonics in every single school, because I'll be honest with you, many of our schools weren't teaching it, because they had flexibility and autonomy. And if the leader chose to teach phonics and phonemic awareness, then that was a choice that the principal did. So what we did was we structured it for every child in kindergarten, first and second, in every school, in every corner of the district, to teach phonics 30 minutes a day. And most of you all sitting at the table, if you are around my age, you heard of Hooked on Phonics. And that's how you learn to read. And so we've forgotten about that is the building block of everything else. And so we did that work, and we also provided intervention, again, for those students who still had those deficits, and we used scientifically research-based programming to help support that work for teaching kids how to read once they got to third, fourth, and fifth, and then middle school. And so we had to have interventions for middle school, and again, we have to empower. We're working to empower our middle school teachers that don't teach English language arts how to help kids in science when you encounter kids who can't decode the words in the science text. the teacher has to be able to help that child through that, and we have to pour into our middle school teachers and help them to be able to spot that and support that. At the high school level, it's a little different because, again, kids are matriculating to high school, so we put in place the support class. So for our English courses, we had a support class. So if you take English 1, for example, you also take an English support class, which is a reading support class that provides you with research-based support for those same types of skills, is what we did. And so again, you got to teach kids to read starting in kindergarten. And the data, okay.
No, can I ask one
data,
quick
okay.
question? Okay.
I can tell her the data, okay.
Thank you, and I appreciate that we do have just a few minutes left. I just want to have you speak to the concerns of the community. It's been well over a decade since we've had a search of this nature, and inviting someone who's outside of Memphis, which I think brings fresh perspective. But what do you do to allay the concerns of those of, you know, you may just disrupt everything, and, you know, familiarity, people are really comfortable with that. So how do you balance that fresh perspective and also allaying concerns of things just going completely awry?
Absolutely. I got that question last night in line from someone about, are you going to just turn everything over? And what I'll tell you is leadership one-on-one, that shouldn't happen at any time. Coming into any organization, just automatically turning over the apple cart just because you think you can. First of all, as you'll see, and I'll use this as a little bit of it, is this part of my answer is I gave you all a draft copy of my 100-day plan if I was selected, and I know that it says draft, so that, because that should be developed in alignment with the board. And so what I'll say is that good leadership means you don't come in and automatically move, and I'll also use the example, the black trash can sitting over there just because it's there. You have to understand why it's black. You have to understand what's inside the trash can. You have to understand how long it's been there and what's been the impact of that trash can sitting there. You've got to be able to do that, and I have to start out by listening and learning because I'm not from Memphis. I don't know everything about Memphis-Shelby County schools, and so in every school district, there are the great things going on. And in every school district, there are challenges. And so to be successful as a superintendent, and I've seen it many times because I've been in education for 30 years, I've seen superintendents come and go. And I have looked at what works and what doesn't. And when you come in and you turn over the apple cart, you first affect culture. And it doesn't matter how great you know academics or the strategy, if the culture is not right, it doesn't matter, because culture eats strategy for breakfast, as the saying goes. And so it goes to culture. And so you don't come in and automatically say everything's bad and I'm here to fix it, because leadership is not about one person. And so coming in, I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm connecting with people. I started yesterday. I loved every minute of it. You know, I hope that I'm selected, but even if I'm not, this has been the most robust process, and the community is amazing. They are amazing, amazing, amazing. They're warm, they're real people, and I like real. And so coming in again is to listen and learn, and telling them based on what I learn, then we're gonna come back together as a group and say, hey, and I'm gonna tell the board, and I'm gonna talk to the community, here's what I heard. Here's what I heard from you. Just like I heard Board Member Love say, it's about academics, but it's also a business. That's what she said. I heard Board Member Doris Coleman say, I need somebody to advocate for the community. I heard Board Member Green say, academics is my priority. I heard Board Member Johnson say, I want safe and clean schools. I heard you say that. I heard Board Member Williams said that we can't expect people to come from the outside and save us. We have to save ourselves. And so I heard Board Member Hewitt Garcia say, I'm concerned about equity and wraparound services to our kids. And so I've heard each of you, and I heard Board Member Wood say that the board sets the North Star and the superintendent you did say that with a great facilitator over here, Tamika. And so I want to first say that that's not good leadership. And you're hiring, as Board Member Williams said, I want leadership. That's what you said. And so that's not good leadership to come in and turn over the apple cart. But good leadership is to come and listen and learn. And then the next phase is to actually open the hood and see what's there. And that is real. You got to ask people, you got to look at the data, you got to look at process, you got to look at all of that. And so this plan takes them through how that's going to look, draft, and what that looks like. And then recommendations will come as a part of all of that. And we'll be able to say, as a board, what do you want to tackle first? What do you want to tackle second? But every voice will be a part of that. Teachers, leaders, community, students have to tell us also. And so I am not here to come in and make Memphis Atlanta. I do want to say that. I want to make Memphis, with you, the best school district, a high-performing school district, and as you say, a premier school district that attracts a diverse set of student population, attracts effective teachers and leaders and staff that's all committed to excellence. And so, again, we will take a look at everything that's happening in Memphis, and we will decide together where we go next.
Just keep talking. The last 7 minutes belong to you, so just
Okay.
take this in. If you would like to say more.
I'll just say, I'll just close really quickly because I can be long-winded because I love this work and I'm very passionate about it. And I want everyone out there that's listening and the board to know again, thank you for just the opportunity to interview, to be the superintendent of Memphis-Shelby County Schools. And thank you for selecting me to be a finalist. These past couple of days have been very hectic, but also rewarding. I've learned a lot from the community. I've learned a lot from you all. I love the bus tour. Thank you very much of the community. And I hope you also got a chance to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm about. And so I just want to close by saying, reminding you that I am a senior leader and a lifelong educator that has been committed to urban education my entire career. And I am the educator that has been fighting on behalf of Black and brown kids in another large urban district that looks very similar to Memphis-Shelby County Schools. I am an academic visionary that you asked for in your posting with HYA that can take your school board goals and turn them into actions with the team so that we produce student outcomes and more equitable outcomes for students. I am the leader that is a fierce collaborator with teachers, students, principals, staff, community, parents. And I've done that in Atlanta Public Schools because in Atlanta, no major decision can be made without fierce collaboration and engagement. And lastly, I'll say that although I'm the Chief Academic Officer and I'm not the CFO or the COO, I still absolutely am the leader that can manage your average of a $1.2 billion budget. But I don't do that work alone. I do that with a team that helps us, and you help us make those decisions around those budgetary pieces. And then, of course, I'm implementing and supporting and working on the strategy. So I have managed a large budget. My budget in Atlanta Public Schools is one of the largest in the district. During budgetary time, it typically takes 2 days for senior cabinet to go through all of the budgets that I oversee because I am, outside of operations, the other large division within the district. And so, last but not least, I hope that you know that I'm a leader that loves people. I hope you can tell that. I love people, I love kids, and I am fiercely committed to whatever community that I serve. I was in Atlanta for 30 years. Of course, you have choices to go other places, but I'm fiercely committed to the work of urban education and moving Black and brown kids again so that every one of them graduate, and I'll close with my 4 E's, with a choice-filled life and having a choice of the 4 E's. The first E, every child should be able to graduate with the choice to either be enrolled in college or some post-secondary institution. The second E, enlisted in the armed services. The third E, employed in the career of their choice. And the fourth E is an entrepreneur. Every child in Memphis-Shelby County Schools should be able to graduate with a choice-filled life of one of the four E's, two of the four E's, or all four of them. And I am that leader that can help you do that, and I know that together we can transform opportunities for kids, and together, if I'm selected, we will lead Memphis-Shelby County Schools into a new era of excellence and achievement. So thank you so much for having me. I love this community. Thank you, Memphis-Shelby County Schools, and thank you everybody in area code 901. Thank you.